Good morning, RB. 3 years ago, we started a journey to renew and rebuild your BMA. With dwindling numbers assailed on all sides, we committed to strengthening the bonds between doctors and to fortifying our collective resolve. We'd just emerged battered and bruised from the torments of the pandemic, the lasting effects of which many doctors still live with today. We committed then that without fear or favour, we would fight relentlessly for better paying conditions after such a brutal experience revealed how expendable our paymasters think we are. I said we would not be taken for granted anymore, and so began our campaigning to arrest the decline of UK medicine. You, RB, asked us to confront the harsh realities of over a decade of pay erosion. I asked, what are you worth? And united, you demanded full pay restoration in the Senate, in Stormont, in Holyrood and in Westminster. We have fought together to restore your pay to reflect the true value of your unique skills, to stem the hemorrhage of UK doctors from the NHS, driven away from a health service on life support, shamefully allowed to wither by the last government. Through your willpower and struggle, we delivered successful ballot after successful ballot, strike after strike, and working together, we proved that this can be done safely and sustainably. The economic argument is sound. Pay the cost for the medical expertise you need because it costs so much more not to. We negotiated in all 4 nations. Yes, we won the highest pay awards for a generation, securing over £1 billion for doctors. It's a lot of money to gain, but that's only a fraction of what's been lost since 2008. No wonder you've been angry. We've become what grassroots doctors want and what governments fear. The sleeping giant has awoken. You have witnessed the revival of your strong, principled and unafraid trade union. By 2027, we will have spent more money than ever training grassroots doctors to be your representatives, £2 million to help shift the BMA closer to your workplace, providing you with the tools to take on daily injustices, to tackle head-on the issues that matter to you locally, regionally and nationally. RB, as we speak, resident doctors are balloting for industrial action in England, with consultants and SAS doctors preparing to open indicative ballots. But the Health Secretary's commitment to restore pay has fallen flat at the first hurdle. Promises made, not kept. I warn him now that trust arrives on foot and leaves on horseback. Make no mistakes. These ballots are not simply about pay, but sending a clear message to government that deals must be honoured, our profession respected, and our expertise paid for. Across England, our LNCs are campaigning against attacks on extra contractual rates, including in London, where doctors of all grades have come together to face off against a cartel of employers, to say in unison that they must scrap the cap. We've made history in the Isle of Man, where we won a substantial pay increase following the first ever official local ballot for industrial action in the BMA's long history. And let me tell you, RB, the resident doctors in the Isle of Man refused to accept their deal until the consultants and SAS doctors were successful too. That's not bloody-mindedness, that's branches of practice winning together. That's trade unionism. In England, the collective will and action of GPs saw an end to years of contractual imposition. New investment worth £1.6 billion and a commitment to negotiate substantive contract within this Parliament. In Wales, GPs have come together and negotiated higher funding settlements to stabilise general practice in Wales. In Scotland, we are fighting for full funding restoration for GPs worth £290 million. And as we speak, resident doctors continue discussions with Scottish Government on pay. They're now halfway to full pay restoration. In Northern Ireland, consultants agreed a new pay scale, but despite the monumental efforts of the BMA, general practice there remains in dire straits. For too long, funding in Northern Ireland has been disastrous for the health service and for doctors. It's intolerable to leave Northern Ireland behind, where politicians promise to deliver, but implementation of agreed deals is glacially slow. In Belfast, I heard firsthand the anger and frustration of GPs following the astonishing imposition of an unworkable settlement that 99.6% of them voted against. A settlement, indeed. A settlement that alleviates none of the pressures, but instead threatens the very existence of general practice in Northern Ireland. So today, another historic first. A referendum will open on whether to move to collective action in response to this dereliction of general practice by Northern Ireland government. No, there are no laurels to be rested on while our biggest challenges still lie ahead in front of us, RB, such as doctor unemployment, a crisis that's already taking hold, set to worsen across England with 50% cuts to each ICB. Governments spinning and sliding abacus beads to cynically suggest there's no money to reverse over a decade of pay erosion, when plainly this is a political choice. The incessant and unsafe blurring of professional boundaries that threaten the very foundations of medicine and what it means to be a doctor. Governments, NHS bodies, employers, universities and the GMC, when we're in a world of ever greater medical and patient complexity, those in charge are in a race to the bottom, frantically ripping up the deep roots of knowledge needed to diagnose and treat patients, replacing true expertise with a thin ice of flimsy, superficial understanding too readily cracked and fallen through. I talk, of course, about the dangerous obsession with substituting doctors. The human body is remarkably complex and fragile. We study, train and develop our craft over decades and to understand disease and illness and how to handle the unexpected. The fight for the soul of our profession is here and now. I'm genuinely sorry for all the PAs and AAs who were missold a career. But trained in the medical model, this is a meaningless phrase to describe something that doesn't exist. The BMA's Medical Academic Staff Committee has called it out for what it is. An illusion. RB, I call it a deception. A deception permitted free rein, where PAs are described as both generalists and specialists, able to walk from one specialty to the next. Today, seeing undifferentiated patients in general practice. Tomorrow in A&E. Next week, maybe operating in neurosurgery. A PA undertaking a caesarean section. Believe me, it's happening around the country. If an employer thinks that's okay, that's okay. No, that's not okay. The conclusion of the systematic review by Oxford University and the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine was unequivocal. The absence of evidence to justify the expansion of these roles was an error of logic likely to cost lives. The BMA collected more than 600 shocking examples of unsafe practice by associates, including the widespread prescribing of medicines, inappropriate referrals for ionising radiation, and sadly, tragic cases of avoidable patient harm and death. But in the face of mounting evidence, coroner's reports and legal challenges, the NHS continues to bury its head in the sand and refuses to introduce the most rudimentary safety measures. No national scope of practice, no ceiling or restriction on what an associate can and can't do. Who the hell is in charge? No accountability, just dangerous game, pass the parcel where the music never stops. The inadequacy of all organisations that exist to protect patient safety has been exposed. uninterested, unwilling, unable to do their job. A scandal on par with what we've seen in other UK institutions like the Post Office. This deserves a public inquiry with full statutory powers to hold those responsible accountable. Just last week, I wrote to the interim CEO of Plymouth and Derriford over shocking demands that resident doctors themselves create a rota to automatically sign off prescriptions and investigations requested by PAs. Truly horrific. Knowing full well, if something goes wrong, the buck stops with whoever's signature is on that script. And if a tragic incident were to occur, how would the doctor feel thinking that they could have prevented it? While managers rest easy knowing that it's the doctors who will be in the dock. This is happening because of a catastrophic, incomprehensible and negligent workforce planning. Pursued at all costs, another NHS postcode lottery where you live today determines if you will be seen by a doctor or not. For a cash-strapped NHS, it's another example of extravagant waste, not saved any money at all. NHS England alone spent £62 million on these PA roles, not even including the millions paid reimbursing AARS roles. 62 million that could have been spent training doctors patients really need. Instead, public money burnt propping up an unsafe, unevaluated experiment aimed solely at undermining high standards of medical care. RB, when medical substitution rises, NHS productivity falls. Now, as Chair of Council, supported unanimously by all nations and branches of practice, I fought this for the profession and our patients. In fairness to the Health Secretary, he listened to doctors' concerns, but I say, let's see what we make of his Leng review. Professor Leng has a difficult job unpicking years of failure by so many organisations, but hopes her review will mark the end of this debate. I want to be clear today that this only ends when doctors are assured that the role is confined to what is safe. It ends when an agreed national scope of practice to prevent the unsafe substitution of doctors is in place. It ends when the title changes, so patients are no longer lulled into believing that they've been assessed by a doctor when they have not. It ends when this government, recognising it must prioritise training the doctors it needs. RB, it ends when resident doctors are no longer paid nearly £10,000 less than their assistants. When the last government sought to wave through the regulation of PAs and AAs, we put up a fight when no others would. We stepped in on scope and supervision, of course, but how disappointing that alongside Anaesthetists United and the brave and courageous Chesterton family, we've been forced to take the GMC to the High Court. A court of law forces a degree of honesty in a debate that has been characterised by misleading terminology and the avoidance of scrutiny. When asked why they were ignoring blaring alarm bells sounded by doctors, patients and coroners, the GMC argued in court that they didn't set a safe scope of practice because they didn't believe the government wanted them to. I'm sorry, you're not a client of government. You're supposed to be an independent safety regulator. How sad to see the GMC dump its founding purpose by arguing that it has no statutory duty to protect patients. But the judge concluded that based on the GMC's position, PAs and AAs are to be described as non-medically qualified medical professionals. Pardon? And it gets more ludicrous. In lieu of any national scope of practice, the GMC argued that any doctor supervising a PA should first check what they can and can't do with their former employers. What world is the GMC living in? clueless about how medicine is delivered, condescending of the working lives of doctors, contemptuous of the profession's safety concerns. I'm afraid it feels as if they've lost the plot. Time for some reflective practice by those at the top of this circus, perhaps. But one of the most shocking acts that we've witnessed as doctors has been to see the GMC lobby Royal Colleges to water down safety guidance for fear that it might affect PA employability. When, RB, did the GMC become the trade union for physicians' associates? And when has it cared ever about doctors' employability? As it boosts its income by charging doctors all over the world princely sums to sit plab, remember, with slim prospects of getting jobs here, while doctors in the UK face unemployment. Why do their vast reserves and financial profits pay for their own private medical care, yet never seem to deliver better support for doctors? Several years ago, our valued colleague, Dr. Suresh, tragically took his own life shortly after receiving a letter from the GMC. Since then, the BMA has been supporting his brave widow in our shared pursuit for justice. The GMC admits that processes carry a real and immediate risk to life of any doctor, yet they've argued they have no duty of care to you. That's the GMC's tagline in 2025. No duty to protect patients, no duty of care to doctors. It's no wonder our recent survey shows the medical profession has no confidence in the GMC's ability to protect the public. Almost 90% agree that the way it regulates no longer distinguishes doctors from medically unqualified staff. That's why over 80% of doctors told us that they now support the creation of a new medical regulator. Well, RB, enough is enough. More than 150 years ago, the BMA, led by our founder, Sir Charles Hastings, campaigned for the creation of a medical regulator that would protect the public. The Lancet's Thomas Wakely wrote that the ambiguity between who is and who is not a medical practitioner was a vice of modern society and a canker in the bloom of progress, an age of puffing and falsehood, a shortcut. Today, we must unearth the old battles to fight for our heart and soul of our profession and renew our calls for a regulator unburdened by the disappointing, abject failure of what the GMC has become. We fight once more for a regulator that can clearly define who can and who cannot practice medicine. That's why today I'm announcing for the first time in over 150 years, we are launching a new BMA register solely for doctors. This morning, members of UK Council, our principal executive committee, met and with support across the four nations were the first to add their names. We now need all doctors to do the same and send a clear and unequivocal message to the government that the time for reformation in medical regulation is now. For a regulator that protects patients, treats doctors fairly and puts them at the heart of its decision-making. A regulator that supports high-quality medical education across a whole career. A regulator that acts when ethnic minority doctors are disproportionately investigated. A medical regulator that knows what a doctor is. An independent regulator that once again commands the confidence of the medical profession. RB, you demanded action from your BMA as your professional association and trade union to win with you on pay and win with you on PAs. And now you've asked us to win together on regulation too. And just as we take on this existential threat to our profession, we too must see a new approach to the NHS. The government is on the cusp of delivering a new 10-year plan for the NHS in England. My advice to the Health Secretary: don't make the same mistakes as other governments. Do not underestimate us. We are not his doctors, we are our country's doctors. Like any patient, I'm desperate for the Secretary of State's rhetoric that things are going to get better to be true. But I'm afraid the medical profession just doesn't buy it. In our recent survey, 90% of doctors were not confident that the government can improve the NHS while doctors face unemployment in the UK. And the public aren't convinced he'll meet his ambitions on waiting times or access either. At its core, any successful plan needs one thing: to listen to those who deliver it. That's listening with intent to act, not intent to ignore. So let's see if this delivers. Let's see if patients get the doctors they need. Let's judge it by whether resident doctors continue to face unemployment from ludicrous specialty bottlenecks. Another debacle that the NHS has been aware of for years, but not lifted a finger to resolve, let alone take any responsibility for. Let's see if the plan solves the funding crisis for medical students, given that 43% are considering leaving or delaying their studies because of financial pressures. Let's also see if there is a clear plan to make sure those students, the future of the medical profession, are taught by doctors, and especially our great medical academics. Because healthcare is a safety-critical industry, and pilots aren't taught to fly the plane by cabin crew. My message to governments is clear. Doctors should be the ones to train the next generation, to drive innovation and learning, and you need to pay them what they are worth. There's opportunity, of course, here to reinvest, join up and rediscover the value and expertise of our public health doctors. Who's better placed to access and commission services locally with their unique understanding, skills and expertise? But let's not ignore culture. Too many doctors and medical students face racism, sexism, abuse, bullying and discrimination in their workplaces. Employers have a duty to act, but they're just not enough staff. They are not doing enough to protect staff. And that's, of course, why we've launched our Sexism Charter and why we've worked with our member relations staff to help people get the support they need as quickly as possible. Someone, of course, must deliver finally on parity of esteem for mental health. Currently, 1 in 5 child and adolescent psychiatry posts remain unfilled. Last year, the average wait after referral to the CAM service was 392 days in England. That's setting up the next generation for a lifetime of preventable failure and misery. As a parent and a doctor, I find that obscene. It's not all going to be solved by AI. You see, you've got me too much of a trade union now, that's it. By AI, I've practiced that for a long time, all right? And spending billions on apps. The shift into the community is laudable. Patients are truly experts in their own long-term conditions, but fixing the foundations means a credible plan to bring back the family doctor. I've said it before, lose GPs and you lose the NHS. Fund the most cost-effective part of our health service fairly and fully. The public are watching carefully, and RB, they share our scepticism. 85% told us they're concerned that doctors cannot find work. 92% of the public want action from the Health Secretary to correct this perverse situation because they're not confident he can fix the health service without fixing first doctor unemployment. So if Wes Streeting wants to be remembered for saving the NHS rather than joining the long line of those who broke it, then this is his chance. Ultimately, the detail will show if it's a genuine plan to reform the NHS and value its staff, or just another press release dressed up as progress. RB, I've been happy to battle all these challenges for you and with you. But I've been so fortunate to have been part of a unique chief officer team working alongside three incredible people. Latifa, I think the whole representative body wants to join me in thanking you for your leadership. I'll do anything to get more time on the speech. Over the last 3 years, I've witnessed firsthand how tough the role is. You've steered us through challenging ethical dilemmas and difficult moments with compassion and calmness. You've brought moral clarity and a real ambition for the BMA to use its voice as a force for good, both nationally and internationally. I think you are the longest serving RB chair in the BMA's history. And it's been a privilege to see you inspire other doctors by breaking glass ceilings, by changing how the BMA supports our elected representatives and bringing the best and true selves to the job. You've gone head to head with the NHS and the GMC on all sorts of equalities issues, demanding action on discrimination and victimisation in the workplace. And you've done it all as a new mum twice, and I know that your family could not be more proud of you. Emma, as Deputy Chair, you've made the BMA an organisation that can really deliver improvements locally and nationally to the working lives of doctors. You've done it with great care, expertise and unfathomable ability and diligence. You've been the driving force behind our industrial strategy, and you've secured more resources and funds to transform the BMA into a fighting trade union. Beyond that, you've championed doctors from all backgrounds, helping to establish our new LGBTQ+ network and made the BMA a home for all by celebrating diversity of our great profession. You are an amazing woman and an amazing leader, and it's been a privilege to work with you. And of course, the young Dr. Pickersgill. This is, of course, your last ARM as Treasurer. And for the younger members of RB, you might not know that Trevor was once Agitator-in-Chief as the former chair of the UK Junior Doctors Committee, part of that successful team who secured a new contract in 1999 that delivered a 28% pay rise. A lifelong trade unionist, a triathlete to boot, you've served the BMA with integrity, honesty, and with members always at the forefront of your mind. It's not easy being Treasurer, so many requests for new and additional resources. But the length and breadth of your time at the forefront of the BMA is a testament to how well respected you are. Because of your work, the BMA's finances are in a much better place, with room now to invest in areas that have really suffered from historic underfunding. And when we launched the Association Strike Fund, you steered it from a nascent idea to a war chest that has helped doctors be supported and stay on the picket line. RB, talent and dedication run through all our branches of practice and committees like a stick of rock. It's the fuel that allows us to shape the world around us and the future of healthcare. Whether that's our Medical Ethics Committee, from a firmly held position of neutrality, successfully working with Parliament to amend the Physician-Assisted Dying Bill to make sure that doctors' voices are heard, or the Board of Science supporting the government's ban on single-use vapes. It's our staff pouring through hundreds and thousands of documents to ensure the COVID inquiry has the right evidence to make the right recommendations, while campaigning at the same time to ensure that long COVID is treated as an industrial disease and for proper protections in the workplace. Today, the BMA is on the right path, an expert professional association representing medical students and doctors by influencing policy, backed up by a strong and unafraid trade union that can win. We know we're not a perfect organisation, but we are today a BMA that isn't afraid to change. That's why we've completed all the recommendations of the Romney Review this year and are focusing on improving the support that we provide ethnic minority medical students and doctors. BMA, we've driven the BMA to be more open, more inclusive and more democratic. That democracy means that this may or may not be my last address to you as Chair of Council. I implore you, don't waste the opportunities you have created. Grasp with both hands the power that we hold to shape the future of medicine in the UK, or as Bono might say, with or without me. And remember that while others blow with prevailing winds, this organisation is shaped by only the will of its members and the integrity of the medical profession. We stick together as we face the trials ahead. Win for each other because the united medical profession is an unstoppable force. But most importantly, show the world that being a doctor is worth fighting for. With head and heart and hand, RB, I move.